Welcome to this latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast with Cyril Gerald Quinn on this Monday, July 15th, 2019, as I discuss the world of sports and pop culture. As always, I'm streaming live here from live on my YouTube channel. As soon as the podcast is done, anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even 20 to 30 minutes, it will appear on my YouTube channel, Ril Dil Podcast. Also, we'll put up the podcast on Blog Talk Radio as well. Probably later on tonight. I'll try to get it up before around 10:30, 11 o'clock, so you'll be able to see it on Blog Talk Radio as well. Hope everybody enjoyed their weekend. Starting off the program again with a on a down note, as we found out earlier today that boxing lost a legendary all-time great in Pernell, Sweet Pete Whitaker, dying tragically, getting hit by a car down in Virginia at the age of 55. Whitaker, it sounds like from all the reports that this was just wrong place at wrong time. Doesn't seem like any criminal charges are going to be pressed to the are going to be put placed on the driver, and it sounds like it seems like it was again a wrong place at the wrong time, sort of type of thing, and just a pure accident. Whitaker was again an all-time great. During when he was at his apex, at his peak, he was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. He was champion and four-time champion, was Lineal champion in two different weight classes. He only lost, he was 44-1 over the course of his career. His losses coming to the likes of Felix Trinidad and also Oscar De La Hoya beat him later on in his career. Trinidad beat him. He was when he fought Trinidad, he was done physically. I mean, he was an old man at that point. But of course, his most famous fight was a draw. And that was, of course, back in 1993, September of 1993, when he fought and to everybody with two eyes, beat Julio Cesar Chavez, the legendary Julio Cesar Chavez. But of course, it was called a draw. Sports Illustrated had to cover, robbed, in which he was completely robbed, because you can go back and watch that fight. Check it out on YouTube sometime. It was a complete beat down by Whitaker, and it was boxing's boxing. Sometimes that's that wasn't the first or last time that a decision didn't go the right way in terms of the sport of boxing. But again, one of the all-time greats without question, a guy who the only two guys who I would put up there in terms of defensive fighters that were either equal or maybe even superior to him, and that would be, of course, Floyd Mayweather and Bernard Hopkins. Those are the only two guys that I saw that were better defensive fighters. A lot of his fights, he wasn't a knockout artist, wasn't a power puncher, but he was a guy that you just could not hit, and a guy that would just technically and from a tactical standpoint just take you apart. I mean, he would absolutely take you apart with his defense, with his quickness, with his pinpoint accuracy on his punches. He did not waste. There was no wasted motion with Pernell Whitaker. When he threw a punch, it landed. He was very economic and efficient with his punches. And again, one of the all-time greats without question, and certainly will be missed by the world of boxing. Again, Pernell Whitaker gone dead at the age of 55. When you get a chance to just check out some of his fights on YouTube. I mean, he was now compared to Floyd Mayweather. Mayweather is better. He's better. Mayweather's a better fighter. But I did find Pernell Whitaker's fights to be more entertaining than Floyd Mayweather's, to be honest with you. But Mayweather's a better fighter. But he was a tremendous fighter. I mean, again, early 90s, that 93 to 97, he was, for about 4 to 5 years, without question, the best fighter in the world. It wasn't even a question who was pound for pound the best fighter in the world for about a 4 to 5 year period in the early 90s. So again, Floyd Mayweather gone at the age of 55. Just getting started here on this latest edition of the Ril Dil Podcast. Of course, the NBA finally starting to calm down a little bit after just a barrage of trades and with the free agent signings and what have you. Of course, the last major bomb to drop in the NBA was, of course, on Friday, last Thursday night, not for last Friday, but last Thursday night when Russell Westbrook was traded to Houston for Chris Paul. Houston, of course, gets Oklahoma City, of course, gets a boat, has already a boatload of picks, but they get Chris Paul, also a 24 picks in 24, 25, and 26, and also 21 and 25 in terms of having pick swaps. Now, Oklahoma City is up to 15 first round picks and 3 pick swaps, depending on if all those picks convey. Now, the odds are all those picks are not going to convey depending on where they fall in a lottery. But the bottom line is Oklahoma City now probably, without question, has more assets in terms of draft assets, in terms of draft capital than any team in the NBA, even exceeding the New Orleans Pelicans. But Pelicans, of course, have some young talent, have maybe some have better quality players as far as young talent. But as far as draft capital and assets, Oklahoma City has the market cornered on that. And again, I'm not shocked about the trade. Um, I think it was a deal that, to me, I would not have made from. I understand what Oklahoma City was trying to do, trying to get off Westbrook's contract. They're going to move Chris Paul. That's just a matter of time. I can't see Chris Paul ever putting on an Oklahoma City Thunder uniform. I'd be shocked if come October he's on the roster. But from a Houston standpoint, I think it was a clear panic move. It was a clear move that was driven by James Harden. I think Houston would have been much better standing pat and bringing back their team that had taken Golden State and back that played Golden State tougher than anyone. And I'm talking about a healthy Kevin Durant led Golden State team, tougher than any team in the NBA over the past 2 years. You can make the case that over the past 2 years that Houston has been the second best team in the NBA, that Houston should have probably won a championship in 2018. I know they had a disappointing loss in the conference semifinals to Golden State this year in 6 games. A lot of people thought they should have won the series, just with Kevin Durant being out. I'm not one of those people. To be honest with you, because I still thought that Golden State had more than enough to handle Houston, and they did handle them. So I wasn't on that train of hey, Houston definitely should win this now. Now, if you want to look at it as a blown opportunity, okay, you can look at it from that standpoint. But to me, they blew their opportunity the year before. Um, and I've been consistent with this time in and time out about James Harden. If James Harden was everything that people make him out to be, in terms of the numbers that he puts up, in terms of what he does in the regular season, then he finds a way to get his team to the NBA Finals last year, being up 3 games to 2 and having a game 7 at home, even without Chris Paul. And we saw James Harden again come up small in the playoffs once again. But with that being said, once Golden State was broken up, once Kevin Durant was out the door, once they traded Andre Iguodala, once Klay Thompson not being back for basically half the year next year, the West is absolutely wide open. And I thought that Houston, as currently constructed, before this trade, was right in position to possibly get to the NBA Finals. Now, would I have picked them to get to the NBA Finals? Probably not. I can honestly say no. I wouldn't have picked them, but they would have been right there without question. So to me, this is a classic panic move. If it doesn't work out, Daryl Morey probably is going to get fired. So he probably saying, what the hell do I care about 2024, 2026 draft pick? If it doesn't work out, Morey won't be around Houston 2024, 2026, or 2025. So to me, it's one of those shot in the dark trades. Listen, everybody thinks it's going to work. Everybody thinks it's going to work. People who I've heard say it's going to work, they've said the reason why it's going to work is because Westbrook and James Harden are friends. They get along. They've known each other since high school. Of course, played 3 years together in Oklahoma City. I say that doesn't matter whatsoever. The fact that they like each other, that has nothing to do to me with on court chemistry, with them being able to play with each other. Now remember this: Westbrook and Harden, you can split their minutes up. You can stagger their minutes. There'll be times with I don't maybe Westbrook is with the second unit. I don't know how D'Antoni's gonna do that, but they're not always gonna be on the floor at the same time. I understand that, but bottom line is they will both be on. They will both be a part of Houston's crunch time lineup. Last 5 minutes of the game, playoff minutes key. Part of their playoff in terms of playoff minutes. They're gonna be on the floor at the same time. And to me, Chris Paul, by far and away, was a much better fit from a basketball standpoint than Russell Westbrook was. Now, you want to say Russell Westbrook at this point in his career is a better player than Chris Paul? Sure, but better player doesn't equal to being better fit. It doesn't. So, again, I don't listen. They'll win 50 games. They'll get to the playoffs. They'll be either first or second round. No, they will go no further than the second round in conference semifinals in the Western Conference. They are not a contender, a legit contender, a team that can get out the Western Conference. And I think this will be a 1 year experiment. I do not see Westbrook being on the team more than 1 year, to be honest with you. Again, you can have two guys on the team that like each other, get along. Um, that does not matter when it comes to chemistry on the court. It doesn't. Chris Paul and James Harden, when Chris Paul got to Houston, they got along and they liked each other. And to me, I look at the James Harden Chris Paul situation. You know, I think Chris Paul is right from a basketball standpoint. I think Chris Paul recognized, but you can say what you want about Chris Paul. You can make fun about the fact that by himself not by himself, but prior to the time that he came to Houston, that he hadn't gotten past the second round. You can make a case that he's overrated, that he's not an all-time great, and shouldn't be put on this pantheon of point guards. I'm one who thinks that he's been overrated for the majority of his career. People call him the point guard and the best point guard this generation and things of that nature. He's a Hall of Fame player without question, and he's a guy who who has a high basketball IQ. Chris Paul knows how to play basketball, and Chris Paul recognized that they were not going to win championships or even one championship playing that style of play. Having one guy dribble the ball 10 billion times, and while the rest of the team just watches, or having a guy that when he doesn't have the ball, basically might as well just be reading a magazine. Because he's not moving. Because in terms of James Harden, when Harden doesn't have the ball, Harden was not cutting to the basket, not moving, wasn't basically. You might as well have not even been on the court. So you're telling me that he's going to all of a sudden be, because he likes Russell Westbrook, that he's going to cut, that he's going to move without the basketball. That's what you're telling me now, because he likes Russell, because they like each other. Because they're good friends. He's going to change or alter his style in terms of playing off the ball. That's the question, and that's the question from a basketball chemistry standpoint. Who's going to play off the ball? From a stand, who's going to play off the ball and who's going to be effective off the ball? Which one of them is going to decide? Which one of them, when they don't have the ball, is going to decide? You know what? Maybe I should set a screen. Or maybe I should cut to the basket and get a layup. Because neither one of them does anything off the ball. Neither one of them does anything off the ball. Now, Westbrook might post up at times. That's what Westbrook does off the ball. He'll post up. But again, he's looking for the ball once when he's posting up. Like Westbrook, I like the first screen Westbrook I see, well, the first screen that Westbrook sets, or the next screen that I see Westbrook set off the ball will be the first. And the same thing with James Harden. So that doesn't have anything to do with. I don't think James Harden was playing, didn't have an interest in playing off the ball or not doing anything when he didn't have the ball in his hands because he didn't like Chris Paul. I just think that's just his game. That's just what he that's what he does. I don't think that was anti Chris Paul, and Chris Paul rightfully so, was annoyed by that, and he should have been annoyed by that. So when I had the ball, you just gonna just be like this, waiting for the ball, waiting for me to pass it, waiting for me to pass you the ball back, so you can dribble 30,000 times. So again, it'll be entertaining to watch. They'll put up a lot of numbers. They'll put up a lot of stats. Um, I you know, they both are going to put up numbers like this. I mean, this if this were like fancy basketball, I mean, these will be your guys. These guys are the ultimate fancy basketball players. But that's not going to equate to winning basketball. It's not going to equate to playoff basketball. It's not going to equate to a championship. And to me, if you're Houston, if you're not competing for a championship, then what are you doing? What are you doing? Like you don't think Russell Westbrook can get you to the level? I mean, again, this to me was a shot in the dark. This was a shot in the dark trade. This was the definition of just desperation. Well, you can't tell me that you believe that Russell Westbrook is going to carry you, not carry you. He's the difference. He's the missing piece to you going from second round or to you coming out of the Western Conference and winning a championship. So it'll be entertaining. It'll be intriguing to watch, but from a basketball standpoint, it will not convey. It doesn't make Houston. Houston is to me. Houston's worse off than what they were a couple of days ago, because for whatever what was going on in Houston with Chris Paul and James Harden, whether they didn't like each other or whatever was going on. And again, it sounds like it sounds like they just got to a point to where they were basically tired of playing with each other, and more so than Harden and Paul, because Paul realized, and I don't think I when they came out with reports, we came out with reports saying that Paul never requested to be traded, and Paul didn't want out of Houston. I completely believe that because Chris Paul knows how close they were to possibly winning a championship or getting to the finals in the last 2 years. Chris Paul is not a dummy. He knows his chances. He knows if he were traded, that the chances are that he wouldn't end up on more than likely possibly wouldn't end up on a contending team. So again, this to me, this was like all James Harden. This was all James Harden. And again, I completely understand what Oklahoma City is doing. Oklahoma City is in complete rebuilding mode. If you're gonna move Paul George, then there's no reason why Russell Westbrook should be on the team at that point. Because moving Paul George was absolutely waving a white flag. Now, it's one thing to have a million draft picks. You gotta do something with them. You gotta do something with those picks. So they've gotten rid of. They're going to more than likely get under the luxury tax. They've accomplished that. They've gotten under. They've gotten. Now all they have to do is get rid of Chris Paul. Is move Chris Paul's contract, which which I think they will be able to move Chris Paul. I think Chris Paul still has some. Listen, I don't think Chris Paul could be the primary on a championship team, but I don't think Chris Paul is completely done. I think Chris Paul can help. There are a couple teams out there that Chris Paul can help. They're able to move his contract. Again, he can't. He cannot be a guy. He can't be a guy that you depend on to carry you over the course of a playoff series. You're gonna have to do load management with him. You're gonna have to watch his minutes. You're gonna have to basically almost physically nurse him to the finish line because physically he's got that he has a lot of mileage on his career on those legs, and he's only what 6 foot. So again, I would have if I'm Houston, I would have kept uh, I would have kept Paul. I would not have gotten to bed with Westbrook in that contract. I'm sorry. I've seen enough of Westbrook over the past 2 to 3 years to know what that movie is going to look like. And again, playing with Paul George, that to me that was a perfect fit playing with Paul George. Paul George was a guy that did not need the ball, that could play off the ball, that would move without the ball. It was a guy that defended, so he could take the pressure off Russell Westbrook from a defensive standpoint in terms of defending the other team's wing players or point guards or the other team's top scorers. Um, you know, yeah. Now, what PJ? You have PJ Tucker. Yeah. Who else? In terms of defensively. And that's one thing. And Chris Paul, even at this stage of his career, is still a superior defensive player than to Russell Westbrook. It's not even close. Even at this late, even the fact that he's 4 years older than Westbrook, he's still a superior defensive player to in comparison to Russell Westbrook. So this seems like things will get a little bit quiet in the NBA now. Yeah, Ben Simmons signed his extension, 5 years, 170. He'll be free agent up until 2025. Again, it's a move that the Philadelphia, it's a move that you have to do if you're Philadelphia. I don't have any problem with it. I mean, it could have waited a year, but Philly, wants to get ahead. If you wait a year, and he's All Star again, then that number probably will go up. So Philly, is getting him on a somewhat, I don't know, I'm not gonna say team friendly contract, but you're getting him. He's 22 years old, so 5 years, $170 million. It's the market value. He's an All Star. He's a guy. He has the potential to be a superstar if he comes back with a better offensive game, and he is a tradable asset. You can move his contract with his skill set and with how young he is, how in terms of how young he is. So that don't have any problem with that move. Philly is in win now mode. Is now or never for Philadelphia as far as some of the contracts they have on their docket with Harris and also Embiid, and now you have Simmons. So they are in absolute win now mode as far as that franchise goes. But again, that contract can be moved if for whatever reason they decide next year. If Simmons doesn't come back with an offensive game next year, they go out early in the first round. There'll be a number of teams that would, even despite that contract, that would take Ben Simmons on their respective teams. So don't have any problem with Philly signing him to that deal. Again, 5 years, 170 is absolute market value for a guy of his skill set and a guy who, again, still has a chance has an opportunity to be a superstar. I mean, Ben Simmons, he can do everything but shoot. I mean, the guy can rebound the ball. He's an above average passer. He has a chance to be an elite defensive player. He can be an all league defender if he really locks in on defense. He could be that type of defensive player. We know he can do in terms of, we know, 6'10", 230. We know he's a freakish athlete. So all the talent, he has all the potential in the world. He just has to come back with a somewhat refined offensive game, and he has to be willing to take jump shots. I'm not even saying he has to come back with a great jump shot. Just be willing to take jump shots and improve his foul shooting. He has to become at least 75. You're a point guard on a team. You have to be at least 75%, 75 to 80% from the line. Again, it'll be interesting watching Philadelphia with their crunch time lineup, and who is that? Will Ben Simmons' offensive game develop to a point to where they want the ball in his hands in key moments in a playoff series. Because last year it was Jimmy Butler was the closer. Ben Simmons, you go down to what they call the dunker spot, get some offensive rebounds, um, some putbacks, things of that nature. We're giving Jimmy. We're going to run basically a two-man game with Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid. That was the Philly offense in the playoffs. That will not work out. Um, they don't have that guy this year. If Ben Simmons does not come back with a refined offensive game, who's that guy this year? It's definitely not Josh Richardson. Okay, so um, Simmons is going to have to come back with a with an offensive game that you can trust down, last 5 minutes a game, last 3 minutes a game in a playoff spot in a playoff game. I don't care about what he does in the regular season, from a standpoint of he'll get his numbers, he'll put up 18. He'll put up 18, anywhere from 16 to 18 points. He'll get his 8 to 10 assists. He'll get his 7 to 8 rebounds. We know he's going to, and he'll shoot a high percentage from a standpoint of the fact that he's not going to take 3-point shots. But the numbers that you're going to want to watch out for Simmons, his free throws and his attempts in terms of jump shot attempts. I don't even care if he doesn't take 3-point shots. He doesn't need to take 3-point shots to be effective. He just needs to take 15 to 20-foot jump shots and improve his foul shooting. Yesterday, you got a match at Wimbledon that reminded you, if you forgot, on why tennis can be one of the most captivating sports out there. And it had been a while since we had a match like this. Probably last year with the Federer Nadal matchup, Federer Nadal, maybe 2 years. I would even say 2 years ago with Federer Nadal in the Australian Open final in 2017. It'd been a while since we got that kind of, just you had to kind of match where you had to stay glued to the television, and for 4.5 to 5 hours, and that was a classic match. Was it as good as Nadal Federer 2008? No, not quite on that level, but it was close. In terms of importance, you can make a case that if Djokovic overtakes Federer for the all-time leader in Grand Slam wins, that was the match that was the match that made the difference, and that was the match that was the turning point in terms of Djokovic being the player who finishes with the most majors. That has to be the most devastating loss for Roger Federer in his career. And Federer has had some tough losses in his career. I mean, you think about, especially in Grand Slams. I mean, you think about what happened with Nadal in 2008, 9-7 in the fifth at Wimbledon. You think about the 2009 U.S. Open where he was up, I believe, up 2-1. Might have been up, maybe even up 2-0, but definitely up 2-1, and lost to Juan Del Potro, who at the time no one knew. Like, Del Potro was not a big name at that point. And, he kind of came out of nowhere and beat Federer, and broke Federer's stranglehold on the U.S. Open. Federer had won 5 straight U.S. Opens up to that point. I just thought that it was no way Federer, and that was prime Federer. This 10 years ago, but Federer was still in his prime at that point. That was a devastating loss. But this one was one of those losses that Federer will take to his grave. You're up 8-7. You have the championship on your racket, double match point, and give Djokovic all the credit in the world. Djokovic at this point in his career is probably the most mentally tough player in the sport right now, and that's saying a lot considering Federer and Nadal are still playing at a high level. But that's one that Federer will just will stew for a long time for Roger Federer. Even Federer, I will say this, even if Federer goes on years from now, let's say 10 to 15 years from now, and he goes and Djokovic, Nadal, all of them are retired, and Federer finishes with the most Grand Slams, that still will bother Federer. That's how bad of a loss it was. Because Roger Federer doesn't lose matches like that, championship matches on his racket. Now, He lost to Federer. He lost to Djokovic twice in back-to-back U.S. Opens with having two match points saved, where two match points were saved. But that was neither. I don't believe either one of those were on his racket, and those were semifinals matchups in the U.S. Open. Those were not finals. This was the Wimbledon final. This was 37-year-old Roger Federer in the twilight of his career with his, one of his nemesis on, the guy that he hadn't beaten in a Grand Slam, hasn't beaten in a Grand Slam since 12. Okay, he hasn't beaten Djokovic in 7 years in a Grand Slam. And this was, Djokovic over the last few Grand Slams that they've met has basically had his way with Federer for the most part. He's had his way. I mean, some of the matchups, 2014 Wimbledon was 5 sets, but 2015 Wimbledon, 2015 U.S. Open Finals were basically one-sided. 4-set match. They went 4 sets, but you never got the sense that Djokovic was not going to win either one of those matchups. He controlled both of those matches in 2015. This match, I thought Federer was the better player. I mean, I thought you look at every stat, you look at Federer, Djokovic won all 3 sets that he had to win in tiebreakers. Federer had break points in those tiebreakers. Federer had again the two match points, and I thought Federer outplayed Djokovic. To be honest with you, I mean, he had finished with more winners, more aces. He finished with more service breaks. He won more points, won more games. Every statistical metric told you that Roger Federer won that match. But in tennis is who, it can come down to a point here, a point there. Who plays the big points? Who plays the big point? Who is better at playing the big points? And when it came down to the tiebreakers, it was Djokovic who for the most part controlled the tiebreakers. Um, so that is a brutal loss for Federer. Now, I'm not one who is automatically going to give Djokovic the moniker of greatest of all time and say that he's going to break this record. Let's slow down on that. He's still 4 majors away from tying the record, 5 from breaking it. In tennis, that is a lot of majors in tennis, and we should not assume that Djokovic is going to continue to play at this level. He'll be 33. He'll be 33, I believe, after the U.S. Open. Um, Remember, Djokovic and they all play a style of play that normally does not age well. Now, they both of them have won majors after the age of 30. They've taken advantage of the fact that no young players have stepped up at all to challenge these guys. That's why Federer and Nadal and Djokovic are just continue to dominate tennis because there's no 25-year-old. Unlike the women's, you have a bunch of young guns that basically push Serena out of the top spot and basically push Serena Williams aside. Okay, there are no players and there are no men's tennis players doing that to Federer, Djokovic, or Nadal. And what I did see yesterday is, and what yesterday also told me was, Federer has some majors left in him. He has some gas left in the tank. He really does. If you told me Federer wins the U.S. Open this year, I would not be surprised if he won the U.S. Open because again, his style of play, his just Federer is kind of like he's kind of like Tom Brady. I mean, whatever training methods he's using, how he manages his body, how he manages his schedule, whatever it is he's doing is working because he's like there's nothing even at the age of 37, soon to be 38. There's nothing that he cannot do, even at this advanced age. And again, he played a great match for the most part yesterday. Played a great match. And again, he showed me that he still is capable of winning majors. Now, in past losses to Djokovic, I didn't believe that Federer was, when Federer lost to Djokovic in those He had three losses, three finals losses to Djokovic between 2014 and 2015, two Wimbledons and one U.S. Open final. And I didn't think that he, even in those matches, even with the U.S. Open final or the Wimbledon final in 2014 where he came close, lost in the fifth set, I didn't think he had any majors left in him. Then he, between 17 to 18, he wins three majors with the two Australian Opens and the one Wimbledon in 2002, the one Wimbledon back in 2017. Federer can win a major or two. I think he has one or two majors left in him, to be honest with you. So it's going to be an interesting race to see who finishes, number one all time in terms of total Grand Slams. I think it's between Federer and Djokovic. I do not think because the problem with Nadal is Nadal does not win on. Nadal only wins French Opens. As soon as Nadal is, as soon as somebody takes out Nadal in the French, he won't win any other Grand Slams. That's the problem with Nadal. That is the problem with Nadal, and that's why, when this thing is said and done, that more than likely, it's going to be a toss-up between Federer and Djokovic in terms of who is the greatest of all time. Remember, Federer has won five or more majors at three different events. He's got eight Wimbledons, five U.S. Opens, and eight Wimbledons, five U.S. Opens, and five Australian Opens, or excuse me, or six Australian Opens. If I do my math right, 8, 6, 5, 19, 1, okay, 20. Nadal, 12 of his 18 majors have come at one event. Now, look at Djokovic. Djokovic now has five Wimbledons. I mean, that's a big deal. Five Wimbledons, seven Australian Opens, and I think he has three U.S. Opens and one French Open. So again, it's going to be a fascinating to watch over the next couple of years. Which one falls off first? Falls off because again, when it happens, when either one of those guys falls off, it's going to happen quickly. That's how it happens especially in tennis. It happens fast. Guys for the most part get old, and they get old, or women's tennis players. When it happens, when they go quick. They go quick. But right now, there are no signs that any one of those three are going anywhere anytime soon. As far as Serena goes, I'm not surprised that Serena lost. She is now 2-5 in her last seven major finals. Serena's old. I mean, we had to listen. I'm surprised that she lost in straight sets, but I'm not surprised she lost. There are a number of young, talented women's tennis players: Simone Halep, Sloane Stevens, Osaka, who's won a couple, who's won two or three majors. Listen, Serena just had a baby. I thought she was in the best shape since she. I thought that in terms of her conditioning, that it was where it was, it was where it needed to be from the looks of it. But the bottom line is she's old, and she's way past her prime. And you hear comments from Billie Jean King, which made zero sense at all. Billie Jean King criticizing Serena, basically saying that she's not fully committed to tennis right now. That she's too, involved in, fighting for equal rights, or too involved in trying to be a celebrity. I want to let Billie Jean King on a little secret. Serena Williams has been a celebrity for 20 years. She's been a celebrity for 20 years, and Billie Jean King is a walking contradiction to criticize somebody fighting for gender equal rights amongst women. I mean, battle of sexes. Bobby Riggs. I mean, come on. Like, it's one thing to knock her saying she's trying to be a celebrity, but you can't criticize her for doing something that you were doing. That you were doing a part of 40 or 50 years ago, about 40 years ago. I mean, please. Or that you've been fighting for your whole life as far as gender rights and equal pay for women and things of that nature. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. But again, Serena's losing because she's old. She's 37 years old. Women tennis players top out at 28, 29, 27 for the most part. Now you had some of the some of the exceptions. Steffi Graf, I think, won her last major. She was 29 and 30. Martina Navratilova was over the age of 30 when she won her last major. Those are, I mean, I just gave you two of the probably top five players in the history of the sport. I mean, probably the three greatest players in the history of the sport probably are Serena Williams, Steffi Graf, and Martina Navratilova. You can sprinkle in Margaret Court or Chris Everett. That's probably your top five right there. But the fact that she's getting to finals is a big deal at this stage in her life. And she's a mother. She's at a different point in her life. Tennis is not the end all be all for her. It's not. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that's affected her play. I just think she's 37 years old, and I think at some point she was going to stop winning majors at some point. Like it was going to happen. Again, unlike the men, there are a number of young, talented women, women tennis players who are winning majors and who have no fear whatsoever of Serena Williams. None. The men are scared to death of Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer. Scared to death. Okay, that's not the case in women's tennis. So I don't know. I don't know. Does Serena have one left in her? I don't know. See, I think Federer does have one or two left in him. I'm not sure about Serena because I just think she's at a different place in her life right now. It's not a knock on her. It's just reality. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Telling it like it is with no apologies. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for your support thanks for your support. And again, check out my website. Check out my YouTube channel, Real Deal Podcast. I'm out.